You're listening to Two Guys Talking Wine with Michael Pinkus and André Prue.
Michael.
André, how are you? What's the weather like?
I'm very sick of shoveling, let's put it that way.
I'm very sorry. Really, I am.
know.
I am very sorry. I wish I meant that.
Do they even have snow in the part of Italy that you're in right now?
Yeah, they get it. They like had some light snow at some point. I don't think I was here for it. I know when I was in Bordeaux, they had some frost, and like -5, I think. But yeah, I don't. There hasn't been a lot of snow. There's been rain. There's been a fair bit of rain. I've had to wear gloves every so often. Does that help you?
I don't even know what to say about that. Like, I'm just like, this winter's just been profoundly not fun, and I'm looking forward to having the vineyards come back to life. And I think you and I are talking a little bit about Niagara this week. Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, we're doing a little Niagara. I could tell you where I've been. I can do a little bit of foreshadowing of what we are going to be doing. Because I got some really great.
Yeah, I think you know what. I think we can get started. I guess you know what, let me dive right into the first topic, and then we'll talk about where you've been in Italy. And I think it's kind of funny that we're sort of flying by the seat of our pants after last week we were patting ourselves on the back for how organized we've been.
Yeah,
and like this week's episode just definitely crept up on us.
I sometimes like these seat of the pants ones, and this one's more probably along the lines of we're teeing up what's coming up, because I have a crap ton of interviews that I did over the last week in Tuscany and things like that. So, and then I've got to get the Bordeaux ones done too. And
yeah, I mean, there's just I know we're sort of just like selling ahead. It's just like it's nice to have a lot of stuff on board to be really excited about. But you know, if we can dive right into the first thing I wanted to chat with this week is I'd be curious. I'm putting a question out to our listeners. How many people listening to this podcast make their wine purchasing decisions based on wine awards? And, you know, feel free to drop into my inbox, Andre at andrewinereview.ca, Michael at michaelpinkuswinereview.com. I'm just like, I'm really curious about like how people buy wine. And I mean, Tony Aspler recently posted on Facebook that he picked up a bottle called Don't Tell Gary. Yeah. And he said he was intrigued because he bought it based on the label. And, you know, I don't want to use the old word to describe Tony, but he's not a spring chicken, and he definitely is one of the most respected, if not the most respected voice in the Ontario wine industry. And I've been saying for years that I make my purchasing decisions based on labels, but it's just like I'm just curious how people make their wine buying decision.
Well, first of all, I want to know where Tony's been the last 5 years. That wine's been in the LCBO a few times. And I remember buying, and I think you bought a bottle based on the label of that wine. So that my first question is, Tony, where you been? As far as as far as people buying for awards, I'm gonna bet that for Ontario anyway, and for Ontario wines, people would go for the award winners.
Yeah, I mean, I almost find it comical. Like, my favorite country to point fingers at is Australia, where you see these bottles that have sometimes like 15 and 20 little gold stickers up at the top, and when you read them, some of them are just like, you know, Adelaide Meat Pie Festival, things like that. But I mean, they look regal to have all that hardware on them, right?
Yeah, and there's obviously some awards that are much easier to get. I know that in years past, and I don't know if it's still true, but I understand for Ontario wineries, the Finger Lakes wine awards are pretty easy to pick something up at.
So, I mean, the reason we're talking about this is over the past week, you actually got an email inviting you to judge the Ontario Wine Awards.
Yep. Second time in a row. For 2 years in a row. I did it last year.
I did not receive an email inviting me to judge the Ontario Wine Awards, and I guess just full disclosure, there are no sour grapes, but one thing that is a point of interest is 2 years ago when I had my radio show on 640 AM, I did do a feature segment being quite critical of the Ontario Wine Awards for the fact that they continue to allow Norman Hardy to enter his wines. And it's something I will remain to be critical of. Just frankly, I don't think there's been an acceptable level of demonstrated remorse from Norm or from the winery for the sexual misconduct allegations that he admitted to in the Globe and Mail.
That's the whole point of this. I think that we still have apologists for Norm who say, well, he wasn't,
tons of them.
He wasn't charged, which he wasn't, and that's true. He's not adjudicated in any way, shape, or form, but there is a document out there, and it was on the internet, that said some of the allegations are true and some of them are false, which means some of them are true, people.
Yeah. But anyways, the reason I'm just saying this is I just want to I'm sure for some people, the critique we're about to give for the Ontario Wine Awards is going to come across as sour grapes. I'm going to do the best I can to say that there are no sour grapes. The Ontario Wine Awards can run their awards show however they like. Had they invited me to judge, I probably would have considered it because it is something that I have enjoyed doing. But regardless, what has happened over the recent years was that Tony Aspler basically handed over the awards process, the infrastructure, the intellectual property to George Brown College.
Yeah, and so now I got invited last year, and I can tell you that they were using a new system last year to calculate judges' scores. But this year, I thought about it for a couple of days, looking over the invite, and I declined to go. And I had my reasons based not only on last year, but I had my reasons based on this year's. Well, let's. I don't know how deep you want me to go in, Andre. I'm more than happy to tell people why I said no.
Well, I think maybe the best thing to do, if you've got it handy, would be to read the parts of the email that were sent to you to invite you to take part in the judging.
Basically, it's done in Toronto. The email just says, come judge, join us, judge, and you get an honorarium of $50 a day. And it's on over a Saturday and Sunday. Well, I can tell you that, first of all, the honorarium, which is not really what you do it for, has been cut in half. I come in from St. Catharines, which is where I live. That doesn't cover anything. Doesn't cover my gas. Doesn't cover my parking. It doesn't cover my time, especially no matter whether I drive in or take the train. I lose money to do it. And I used to do it, for Tony, where he used to give $100 a day, and he would do it over 2 Saturdays. Again, it's not a big money-making thing for you. But the $50 covers nothing for me. They don't cover anything. They don't cover a hotel. Like when I do the All Canadians, at least they cover a hotel. They cover my transportation. They cover everything. Meals while I'm there for 4 days. You get a lunch at the Ontario Wine Awards, but they cover nothing else. That's all you get is the $50. But and they have a heck of a lot more judges than they used to. When you and I would judge at the Ontario Wine Awards, I think the maximum was 16 judges, maybe. I think usually it was 12. Andre, you want to chime in on this one?
We've had the bigger groups than that. Like I think as many as 20 or 24. I know the last year I was there, it did get pretty big because there's a lot of categories. But I think one thing, like just since we're getting to the weeds about like dollars and cents, I do think it's absolutely fair critique to talk about the honorarium because you want to make sure that you have qualified judges of a decent caliber, which, you know, if you're running an awards show, like you would want to make sure you have the fundaments to put on a great award show. But the other thing is like the wines are not a comprehensive look of what happens in Ontario. In case anyone didn't know that, and you know, I apologize if I need to say that, but wine awards are basically a marketing tool for wineries to help promote their products.
Yes.
You have to pay. You have to pay to enter your wines in a wine competition.
Correct.
So I wonder what's happening with the Ontario Wine Awards that they would be cutting that honorarium in half, because I think what you're saying is fair. A lot of the wine writers and wine personalities, wine communicators who are Toronto-based are not Toronto-located. Myself and Chris Waters are both located in Hamilton. Rick Van Sickle and yourself are both located in, and Tony Aspler are both located in St. Catharines, in the St. Catharines area. And like for many of us, like we're not living in the core of the city. So I think what you're saying is true. Like $50 doesn't even cover a half tank of gas these days, let alone parking on top of spending your day in there. And some of these days can be quite long. The last time I judged the Ontario Wine Awards, we had a couple panels where people were just running out of gas, and we were going from like 9 a.m. until I think 3:30, 4 p.m. And like you and I, we've done Toronto life. Like to sit and taste wine for 7 hours in a sitting is a lot.
It is.
Like, it is exhausting to do that.
The other problem that I have, and this is my major problem. Let's forget the $50 for a moment, because there are, you know, had Tony Aspler years ago asked me to do it for free, absolutely I would do it. Love Tony,
yep,
obviously. And
yep, same here.
And so I would have done it for nothing. And when I found out there was a stipend, that was like, wow, that's wonderful. But
yep.
when Tony ran it, it was the hardest award to win in Ontario. You know,
yep.
There was 1 gold, 1 silver, 1 bronze. You know, the Chardonnay category, 1 gold, 1 silver, 1 bronze. Cabernet Sauvignon, 1 gold, 1 silver, 1 bronze. And if nobody got to the level of gold in the scoring, no gold, silver and bronze that year. You know, that's what happens in a, you know, being in a cool climate in a region where Cabernet Sauvignon does not grow particularly well. You're not always going to get a gold version.
Well, and I've been on other panels too. Like the hybrid panel is really difficult to get a gold medal at. So the scoring, so the way it works, or the way it worked before, because I haven't been there for a couple of years, is you generally start with a wine in the morning. They put all the judges in a room. They have us taste the wine, and we have a discussion about the wine. And then we sort of come to a consensus about what we would score the wine, and then they reveal the wine just as a bit of a calibration for the room. Because I know for myself, you know, I won't say that I score wines more relaxed than you do, but I use a star system. I don't use a point system, and you score wines on the 100-point system. But I would say that the wines are scrutinized harder, at least they were scrutinized harder at the Ontario Wine Awards than certainly I think I would scrutinize these wines in my writing. And the benchmarks were quite high. And, you know, on the other side of the coin, you know, you would have sometimes, generally notably in the Cabernet Franc, the Pinot Noir, or the Chardonnay categories, multiple gold medal winners, but they would only give out 3. You could have 2 gold medals and 1 silver, or 2 gold medals and 1 bronze, or basically it was 3 medals per category. And I'm kind of with you with where we're going on this is I think the prestige associated with the difficulty of winning those awards is something that set the Ontario Wine Awards apart from, the Adelaide Meat Pie Festival that, and I'm sorry if the Adelaide Meat Pie Festival is real and they do host a wine competition and it is more strict than that, I'm open for feedback on that, but I think you get the joke that I'm trying to make.
I really respect, and I understand that over the years, wineries, would be like, why am I going to enter the awards when I'm, probably not going to get them? Because look, it's hard to get one gold, one silver. That's why the Olympics exist. You know what I mean? One gold, one silver. It was the Olympics of wine. And if you thought you were good enough to get in, you put your wine in. Nowadays, it's just another awards thing where they give out so many awards. It's almost meaningless, and it is, to me, it is bastardized what the meaning of the Ontario Wine Awards are. If you want to be just like, no offense, I am part of the All Canadian Wine Championships. They have always given out, percentile-based awards. I also understand that Wine Line does the exact same thing. That's what set the Ontario Wine Awards apart. Why, in God's green earth, do we switch that?
I mean, it's the whole idea that a lot of this craft of like wine marketing and wine writing and wine communicating in general has just become a free-for-all for the who can reach the lowest common denominator. In a world with Luca Maronis and James Sucklings where every wine is above 95 points, it is disappointing to see that the Ontario Wine Awards has removed its benchmark standard of excellence. And you talk about, why would I enter in a wine if it's not going to win? Well, if you know your wine's not going to win before you enter it, you're probably not making really great wine, right? And like I think the thing about a wine awards that only gives out 3 medals is it's something else that pushes the standard of a region higher. If you want to beat the Domaine Kalises and the Tazes of the world, make better wine. That's it.
Exactly. And that's what I think the Ontario Wine Awards did. I think it pushed the industry harder, because if you wanted to put a wine into the Ontario Wine Awards to try and get that gold medal, think of that winery in Prince Edward County that won it 3 years in a row. I can't remember what the name of it is.
Exalted. How can you forget the name Exalted? Like, Jerry makes great wines.
Yeah, so Exaltet won 3 years in a row. Out of nowhere, this guy comes and makes Chardonnay and made his name at the Ontario Wine Awards because he made, not just, he did it the first year, and he's like, oh my God. The second year was, that doesn't happen. And then the third year in a row that he won it, that was just mind-blowing. But think about it. That guy made his name, Exaltet made his name at the Ontario Wine Awards. Can you name me any Ontario Wine Award in the last 3 years since they've been taken over by George Brown that's made you go, wow, that's head-scratching, besides the one we mentioned earlier that wasn't head-scratching but was, almost appalling?
Well, and if I can go back to the original thing, I think what I find appalling about them allowing Norm to enter his wines is, I think this is the fair question to ask, is if the behaviors that were admitted by Norm were done by a student or a teacher at George Brown College, would they still be allowed to attend, or would they still be allowed to teach? And I think you and I both know the answer to that.
Oh, I guess the wine industry has a lower standard. Is that what we're saying? Which is also it's kind of a terrible thought that we have about an industry that we love so dearly.
Yep. And yeah, and I apologize for anyone if I've pulled the curtain out from what people thought wine awards were. I can just say, with regard to the ADX Wine Company, I frankly have it in my business model and planning to not ever enter my wines in any award competitions. I think I make pretty good wines. Michael, I definitely take your feedback to heart. And you haven't always loved everything that we've made, but for me, winning awards is when I have an empty warehouse and no wine left to sell. And I understand that some awards might help me sell it quicker, but frankly, I don't want to take the risk of entering an awards competition where when Pigs Fly Rosé gets a bronze medal or a silver medal, because I'm going to have that certainly just doesn't do anything for me, right? But that's the thing is, like, that's the risk you should be taking when you enter a wine competition. Is it should be about who's first, second, third. Like, I was just thinking about, like, one of my favorite traditions is in the NHL. If you win the conference championship, the teams generally don't touch the trophy because it's bad luck. Because you haven't won the Stanley Cup until you win the Stanley Cup. Nobody walks around and nobody throws a parade for the conference champions. And honestly, like, we should be okay with that. It's okay to want to win, and it's okay to run your competition where only the winners win. Like, get rid of this, like, bullcrap participation medal type competitions.
And that's what, unfortunately, in my opinion, the Ontario Wine Awards has devolved into, and that was my second reason for not wanting to judge. And if I have that reason, and I am a highly qualified judge, if I do say so myself, I wonder how many other highly qualified judges are going to pull out when they start seeing, one, an honorarium that is below, even what their time is worth, and two, when they start realizing that they are just giving out participation golds and silvers and bronzes. So who does that leave you with to judge awards?
All this being said, I wish anyone who's listening to this podcast, if they do decide to enter a wine in the Ontario Wine Awards, best of luck. I hope that when you do get your results, that it does help you move your product, because that's what wine awards are supposed to help you do. And, I truly wish this from the bottom of my heart. I really hope that George Brown College has a successful event, that they have lots of entrants, and that people pay attention to it, because, we're still at a point where the Ontario wine industry needs as much help as they can, raising their profile. So that's all I've got to say about that.
Yeah, I would echo that. It's just not going to be with me this year. It's all there.
So you sent me another text message that I'm hoping you can unpack a little bit, rather than getting into some of the, like, I did this and I did this. But you talked a bit about, like, you've been to some of the larger trade shows or wine shows over there in Italy.
I actually went to I went to one called Fivi, which, did I speak to you about Fivi at all at any point in time?
All you sent me was because, like, you have been very busy on this trip, and you and I have not been chatting as often as we usually do. But you basically just sent me a message that was just like, I'd like to talk about how they do things differently here than they do there. And it's just like, you didn't let me know whether you're, like, hot and bothered about something or anything. And I'm always game to hear what you have to say.
I'll talk to you about two shows I went to. In November, I went to one called Fivi. It was the Fivi Wine Market, which is held at the Bologna. I'm going to go fairgrounds or convention center or whatever it is. It's a massive building. Let me just tell you that. And basically, they had 3 Toronto Convention Center style rooms with booths of wine. And I was like, oh, great, a tasting show, right? I had a friend take me there, and then I started watching what was going on, and I couldn't believe what I was actually witnessing. André, it was a market. It was the Fivi market. People were walking around with shopping carts, and they were buying wine from stands. They could buy wine from anywhere in Italy that had decided to show up at this market. You could get wine from Sicily all the way up to Alto Adige and everywhere in between. It was the most amazing thing you'd taste the wine, then you could buy a couple bottles, put them in your shopping cart, take them home. It was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen.
It comes back to, once again, that if the LCBO or the Ontario government actually cared about the Ontario wine industry, they would allow something like this to take place. Because the reality is, while we're able to sell at farmers markets, it's still, it's not something that's part of people's routines when they go to farmers markets. And I sell ADX wines at farmers markets, under the licenses which we operate. But what you're saying, I mean, it's exactly how it should be. And when you talk to Europeans, because wine is such a part of the diet, whether they're French or Italian, there hasn't been that disconnect from the agricultural side of wine production and wine sales. And it's kind of funny, right before the end of the HST holiday, I put together a fairly large consignment order with an agent that I really like, because I wanted to buy some Burgundy I probably would have treated myself to later on in the year while I could save the 13% on it. And what I did was, with my friends, I basically ran a little, it's not a black market, because what I did was not against the law, but certainly a gray market where, I have a group of friends where I said, like, here's some recommendations, but also here's the portfolio. Let's consolidate an order and do some shopping. And it's just like, I don't understand why to purchase these like small quantities of wine, the high quality wines from agents that we like, we still have to do it behind closed doors, only through email, only through hush hush, only selling by the case. Like, we're at the point where this needs to be allowed to exist outside the LCBO, outside the monopoly.
Could you imagine, like, Wine Country Ontario taking over just one room? Because basically, let's be honest, that's for the Ontario wineries. That's all it would really take. And just, you could walk around and just buy any Ontario wine that you wanted. This to me was like, when I saw people with shopping carts and boxes and just filling them up. This is going to be their allotment of wine that they're going to, have, I don't know, maybe for the summer, maybe, just for this winter, maybe for Christmas, because it's like a Christmas market. You see the Christmas market that happens in Toronto at the Convention Center every year. Imagine that same kind of Christmas market for wine. You could buy your gift wines. You can buy your Moscatos. You can buy your Chiantis. You can buy your whatever you're looking to buy. It was there, and I swear to God, Andre, at one point I just stood and watched people doing this, and thought, I live in the wrong country. I live in the wrong country for a wine lover.
What was in your cart?
I put it this way: I had no idea I could do it until later. I didn't buy anything, because the problem is,
you didn't buy anything.
I didn't buy anything. I didn't buy a thing. But I did make some great contacts in Piedmont, and I did go to Piedmont and got stuff. So that's what I did.
How many wines do you think were available to be tasted at this fair or at this event?
Okay, so they never said, but now let me move on to my next one, and it'll give you an idea. Remember that Phoebe event was in 3 of these massive rooms. Okay, so today on our recording date, I went to Slow Wine Bologna. Okay, the Slow Wine Fair, which is different from Raw. You and I went to the Raw Wine Fair in Toronto this year, and it was a pretty dismal event. Not because it was a bad event, but it was dismal with the turnout. It was basically, as far as I was concerned, in a theater. And if you had what would you say, 100 producers there, that would have been, I'm over exaggerating.
In Toronto?
Yes.
If we had 40 producers there, I think that would be an accurate number of what was there. Like, think about it. Like maybe 8 to 10 wineries in a row. There were 3 rows, and then the fringe of the room. That's 30 plus 10, so maybe 50.
Okay. So here I am now at the Slow Wine Festival, and they even put the numbers on their website. They had just the slow wine part of the festival. This did not include, because there was another section, which was the Sana Food Festival, which was also happening at the same time. And basically this is a company that sells, coffee machines and bottling things, or they don't sell, but they're all part of this group that comes out, and they sell to, restaurants and consumers if they want, and things like that. This place had 1,174 producers and over 4,900 wines. Over 2 rooms. So if you can imagine, because it was held in the same place that the Phoebe Festival was, they had a 3rd room. So I'm gonna have to guess that I was probably looking at over 1,500 producers at Phoebe and probably over 6,000 wines.
And how many did you taste?
I did. There's a point where things get really overwhelming. So you start looking at areas that you want to go to. So I tasted a bunch in Piedmont. I did a little bit in Alto Adige, and then there's another room that was all about basically agents or companies that bring wine in. So I saw wines also from France, from Chile, from Turkey, from Switzerland, from Argentina. Not a lot. Like, put it this way, Italy was the main focus. But there was a block of French wineries there as well. It was a pretty impressive array of wineries and wines that were there. And like I don't know, the show goes on for 3 days. You'd need 30 to get through that whole place.
That's awesome. So I guess maybe like getting past the criticism part of it. I know we talk a bit about like wine tourism. Is this a sort of thing where, if you really dug wine, is this like something that would be worth visiting, or is it really just for locals? And like the next question I have as well is like who attends something like this? Is it like regular consumers, people like you and me? I guess I shouldn't say we're regular consumers, but like consumers who are, interested in stuff that they can't get on the beaten path, or is it maybe restaurants who are looking to shore up their list?
So they do it over, where we in Canada would do something like this over the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They start on Sunday, and that's the consumer part of the event. Like the consumers come out on the Sunday and they, have a blast and do whatever they do. It's probably the busiest of the day. Obviously, I didn't go there. The Monday is what they consider industry day. So while I am press and I could go on any day, I did go on industry day. And that's where, and I bumped into, my friend from Lucimata, the winery in Umbria. And, he was like, today is the day that we want to see a lot of, restaurateurs. We want to see buyers. We want to see agents. And that's what he was telling me. That's what the day was really about. This is the day that they really, because restaurants, for the most part, I guess, are closed on Monday, so their staff can get out. And I was actually there with a sommelier from a restaurant, and he was definitely looking for stuff. He was also tasting some really nasty hippie juice, as you would call it. And I was like, "Why are you tasting it?" He goes, "I got to know about this stuff. I've just got to know about it."
But I mean, that's it. Like, that's one of the reasons. And that's what, honestly, when we went to Raw Wine, I went there with high hopes because, I want to make sure that we understand what's out there before we critique it. Orange wine, I think, is one of those examples. It's still something that, for the most part, it's a style that I've had a very hard time finding ones that I really enjoy, but I have had a couple that I've enjoyed, but like literally a couple, it's not a style I go out of my way to seek, but yeah, anyways, I think you and I are certainly trying harder to make sure we're approaching wine with, approaching trends in wine with a more open mind.
I again, alongside him, I was tasting some of these orange wines. André, I'm going to make you shudder here. I'm not going to mention the winery, but there was one winery who had decided that Chardonnay for a year on skins was a good idea. I can tell you it is not.
Well, what did it taste like?
Nasty hippie juice.
No, but I mean, like, come on. Can you give like an actual tasting note? Like, was it bitter? Was it oxidized? Did it taste more like sherry? Like, was there any sort of redeeming quality?
That's the whole point. There was no like it had lost any resemblance of a white wine. First of all, like totally forget that it was Chardonnay. And Chardonnay is a grape that you and I both know you can really play with it. This is not a way to play with Chardonnay. There was a couple of Malvaisias, which is a pretty boring grape to begin with. Yeah, maybe 3 months on its leaves, made it a little, gave it a little character. I didn't like it, but I could see where they were going. They were giving it a shot. Trebbiano, again, a grape that's not, for the most part, very exciting. Throw a couple of months on its skins. Maybe you've given it, some tannin. I don't know why you want to give white wine tannin, but you do your best. There was one winery who put Sauvignon Blanc on its skins for 7 months. When he said it was Sauvignon Blanc, I went, "You're kidding." There was no redeeming quality to that Sauvignon Blanc whatsoever. There are some grapes that I get, maybe, using skin contact to, Pinot Gris, boring grape, give it some skin contact, give it some color, maybe get some flavor out of it. But for grapes like Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc that already have characteristics that you want, man, why are you trying to kill them off?
I mean, that being said, when you were talking to these people, did you ask them, are people buying their wine? Because I think this comes down to, like, you and I and our audience have a pretty good idea what yours and my palates are. And hopefully, that's how dealing with wine journalism is find a critic that matches up with your tastes, and hopefully they become a reliable guide for you. So, I mean, unfortunately, it means the customer is always right. Like, did you see people or hear people buying either of these orange wines that you tasted who were really excited? Because I've heard rumors and rumblings that in places like Quebec, that they've seen a drop off in sales, and there's orange wines sitting in a warehouse, things like that. And it's just, I'm just curious, like, whether the trend is actually falling off.
There were people there to taste it. Whether they were buying it, I don't know. We didn't see it. Like, today's was not a day for buying. Today was tasting day and then making contacts and then buying later. I know that the sommelier that I was with was not buying that stuff. He just wanted to know what was going on. But here's a thing to think about. And when I was in Tuscany, it was orange wine and natural wine, let's call it that, and was a topic of conversation between both journalists and some of the winery owners and principals. And one of the things that was floated was this, that young people are not drinking a lot of wine at the moment, and that is a segment of the population that is dropping off. Is it because sommeliers have convinced people that this natural wine juice that they are getting or that they are drinking is wine, and that the young go, this is nasty, I'm going to turn to gin, I'm going to turn to mixed drinks, I'm going to turn to cocktails?
No, but young people are not just not drinking wine, they're not drinking, period. They're turning away from alcohol.
But is it because of the taste? Like, why aren't the young drinking? And that is the big question, I think, that people are asking. And the question about wine in particular, is it because there is this nasty hippie juice out there and people are drinking it and going, I don't want anything to do with that? It's an idea.
I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think it's something bigger than you and I. And honestly, it apart from the fact that I own a wine business, I don't think it should necessarily be immediately looked at as a bad thing. I think if you're running an ultra premium brand, we still have millennials who are going to continue latching onto that. But, you know, if you're running White Claw or, I don't know, Twisted Tea, like other products that are not made to taste good, are really just made to get you intoxicated, your days might be numbered.
I don't think so. I think people still want that. And
I get it. Like I understand that you've got like you absolutely despise this new style of winemaking, and you know I'm kind of with you on that people should be making stuff that tastes good and not the other way around, like making stuff for the sake of making it. But I think it's a bit of a stretch to say that that's why young people aren't drinking.
I don't think it's the only reason, but I do believe it probably is a factor. Like, put it this way, if you go to a restaurant, you know nothing about wine, and you know you're trying to impress a date, and or impress anybody if that's what you're trying to do, or just learn. And the sommelier behind the counter says, "Oh, this is a really good bottle of wine," and it turns out that you're like, "This is terrible. Why do people drink wine?" You know, well, I remember when I was young, probably about 14, let's say, we had a family friend who was doing some landscaping, and my mother bought him beer. And at one point, I'm sitting there watching him do it, and he goes, "You want a taste?" And I'm like, "Sure." But man, I didn't want to drink beer for a while. I did not like the taste of that.
Oh, God,
that beer.
Michael, come on. Like, Michael, come on. That's just such okay. What you're saying is kind of nonsense. You lost me a little bit on this to say that the natural wine and the orange wine movement is to blame for why Gen Z aren't drinking. Come on, Michael.
I'm not saying it's the only reason. I'm saying it is possibly one of the reasons why we are seeing a decline in wine drinking, is because if people are telling you this is good and this is wine and it tastes like dirt, why are you going to want to drink it? Same thing would go with any other drink on the planet. If Coca-Cola tasted like dirt, we wouldn't be drinking Coca-Cola. Well, suddenly we now have this whole movement telling us this is wine, and no, it's dirty. It's unclean. And so people know what they shouldn't put in their mouth. That's why the human race has, adapted, well, unfortunately, to where it is today, which is another story altogether. But it's the reason why the human race survived this long is because when something tasted bad or killed you, you did not drink it or eat it.
Michael, there are 1 billion people on this planet every day that drink coffee. And I feel like this is some big joke, and I'm not in on it. I think coffee is one of the most disgusting things on the planet. But, like, I don't know. There's people who drink, like, awful tasting things all the time. I mean, surely you've got to understand that. Like, you've got the palate of a picky 5-year-old when it comes to food.
And I say, Dr. McGillicuddy's Butterscotch Ripple is still very good whiskey.
So, you can support this podcast, patreon.com/2guystalkingwine. I'm André Prue of AndreWineReview.ca, at André Wine Review on all social media. Michael, it's really nice. Like, we're testing the limits of our technological capabilities with these podcasts, but it's always nice to connect with you.
It is lovely to connect with you, André. Yes, this one was actually recorded in 2 locations, and through the magic of André Prue's production abilities, it'll sound like we're in the same room.
Hopefully.
And the only way that I can hear André is actually he's on the phone, and so technology wins again. I'm Michael Pinkus of michaelpincuswinereview.com. André, lovely talking with you. We'll be doing this again pretty soon for a week 2 podcast while I'm here in Italy. And I guess it's time to say good night.
Thanks for listening. Please subscribe to Two Guys Talking Wine on iTunes.
Two Guys Talking Wine is produced by Adam Duran and Ken Little.